Today we're going to tie a simple and pretty popular bonefish pattern really everywhere that bonefish are. It's a spawning shrimp pattern. I believe this is an EP spawning shrimp. It's a relatively basic pattern. We're going to use a SL11 3H and a number 6. That's not the hook that the traditional fly was tied on, but this is my preferred bonefish hook. So this is what I'm going to use for today's video. Set it up. We're going to use orange thread. It is the Danville's Flymaster 210 denier in the, I think it's fluorescent orange is the color that it is. But start by laying down your thread wraps for your base. And I'll bring my thread wraps for this pattern just past the bend. And then bring my thread back to the eye of the hook. And for the weight, we are going to use a mini lead, a mini lead dumbbell. And bring our thread back up to front of the fly. We're going to stop before we get all the way to where our first thread wraps ended. And I'm using just homemade dubbing. It's a mixture of yarn and some other stuff. We can cover how to make your own dubbing in another video. I'm going to take a clump of this dubbing. There's also other options you can use for this. Really, any shrimp dub works. The Skoke shrimp dub that we have here at the shop works really well. But I'm going to take it and I'm going to start rip stacking it. So just pinching on the ends and pulling to help get the fibers lined up. And then we're going to take a chunk of this, a little bit more here, and bring it down. See if we like it. I think I'm going to add a little bit more material there. That looks about right to me. And take the extra length off of this side, just get it all nicely lined up here. Now we're going to tie it in for the horn on our shrimp. And I like to leave a little bit of a tag end here on this side so that once I get this about halfway down towards my thread wraps, I'll fold this dubbing back over. And that really just helps secure that dubbing in there and keeps it from pulling out when a fish bites it. We'll wrap all the way to the end of those thread wraps there and then bring it back to cover that up. Next, we're going to do the orange beard on the shrimp. So this is fluorescent orange hairline rabbit, and it's just a rabbit strip. So I like to take it and then just take a very small piece of the end of this and cut the flesh of the strip so it keeps all of the fur together. If you just cut it off the strip, you can do that, but it's really hard to manage. A rabbit tends to get everywhere and falls apart, and it just ends up being a pain. So take that and then line it up so just a little bit of that orange is sticking out there, not a whole lot of it. And then we're going to tie down over just the hair and Bring our thread wraps again back down to where we ended them. It looks pretty good. Now we'll take this excess rabbit here with the chunk of flesh that it was on and trim it. So now you have just the rabbit hair in there. You don't have to worry about that flesh strip or anything. It just keeps all the hair together nicely to tie it in. We'll cover those up. Next, we're going to throw in our eyes. And we're going to be using the Easy Shrimp eyes. These are black. And we're going to take it and we're going to split those eyes and tie it on top of the shank, just like that. So they go on either side of the bend of your hook. Get it level on top of the shank here. And tie it in. This is going to want to roll on you on the shank because you're tying something flat onto a round hook shank. So it likes to roll the direction that you're wrapping your thread wraps. So you got to be kind of careful to try and keep it from doing that. You can kind of use your fingernail and push it towards one side or the other until it gets nice and straight and lined up. And when you get it lined up where you want it, you can just tie it in, but a lot of times as you continue to fly, it'll rotate under the tension of the thread. So I like to take brush on, zap-a-gap, and give it a quick little touch of super glue along the eye here and the thread wraps over it just to lock it in place so it doesn't spin on the hook while we're tying it. Give it a second to dry here, and then some wraps over it just to lock it in place and press that glue into the rest of the thread. Next is going to be the shrimp's antenna, and we're using black crystal flash for this. I like to cut the corner off of this package just to keep everything together, and I use the tip of my scissors and I just pick out the strand of flash, pull it out, clip it, and to keep everything lined up nice, I left this little tag end of the Easy Shrimp eye up and not tied in, and you can just tuck this in. I don't know if you can see that, if that's a good angle, but the flash just tucks in between the shank of the hook and that tab from the eyes. And then I will pinch it on either side of my vise here just to keep it up and do my initial tie-in to lock those into place, and then work those strands of flash up so that they sit right underneath each eye. Then we can cover up the base of that shrimp eye. Bring our thread up. And we're going to tie in our legs next. We're going to use the Chicone's barred silly legs here. You can use any color or flavor you want. This is one of my favorites for tan shrimp patterns. We're going to take 2 of them. Clip them off. And then they're going to get wrapped around your thread and pinched together. Invert your hook, and then this just gets tied straight down onto the top of your shank here, and then lock down those legs, working your thread towards the bend of the hook. And then I like to not, you can tie it all the way in there if you want. I like to stop about halfway, figure out where these silly legs are laying, just kind of separate them nicely so that I have 2 on each side. And then after I do that, I'll pinch it together and finish wrapping it so that they all sit nice and are laying flat. like that. Now I'm going to use this spring piece here on my vise. You don't have to do this. It just helps keep everything out of the way while you're doing dubbing loops. And I like to take my silly legs and put them up in here just to keep them trapped, lined up nicely, and out of my way. And we're going to bring our thread back all the way up to the end of our thread wraps, and we're going to do a dubbing loop. So I'm just making a loop with my thread here, and then I'm going around my loop twice with the thread, and then locking it up into place, and then wrapping my thread back up to the eye. Now I'm going to use my bobbin rest here to hold that while we do our dubbing loop. So now I'm using the same dubbing that I used for the horn. We're just going to take a clump of this dubbing out, do a little bit of rib stacking to line all the fibers up. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Perfect. And then I pinch the clump and I just grab a pinch off the ends and pull it out. And then I just take that, it's nice and flat and kind of laid out, all straightened out. And then I tuck it into my dubbing loop. We're going to just rinse and repeat and keep doing that. And we'll do that right there. So you get about that much on there. Just tease it around a little bit, make sure that it's all evenly dispersed. You don't have any denser patches or clumps. And then pinch your thread, spin your bobbin. Once that bobbin starts climbing up, then slowly pull down on the bobbin and let those spirals go through your fingers to slowly spin that dubbing loop. I like to do 1 or 2 more twists just to make sure that that's all nice. And then we're going to brush it out. Take care of all of those trapped fibers from spinning that loop. Once we do that, brush our dubbing into one direction here, and we're going to do tight touching wraps with this, working back towards our lead eyes. Now I left this loop really long. You don't have to. You could do that loop. You could tie it off and then just use your thread. But since I have this extra length here to work with, it makes it easier to tuck all the stuff in the loop, and then I'll utilize it afterwards. We're just going to take our same dubbing and we're going to work it up onto this thread and twist it in one direction and pinch and twist to start cording that dubbing around your thread. If you're having problems with it sticking, you can use wax and wax your thread more. This Flymaster's already waxed thread. It's not a heavy amount of wax, but you don't need a lot. And again, I'm just trying to make sure that it's relatively evenly dispersed. We're going to do our first wrap here, which traps the end of those fibers, and then we're just going to go back through and make sure that this is all corded up nicely. And then we're just going to start working this dubbing back. See, I got it a little thick here, so I'm just pulling this down and cleaning it up a little bit. And when we get just past where we tied in those shrimp eyes, that's about where we're going to end it. So I'm going to take my thread and just tie off that dubbing there, do a couple wraps on each side of it, and trim this off. Bring your thread back up to where you ended your dubbing, and we're going to do another dubbing loop. Same dubbing again. And same thing, we're going to tuck it back in there and get my dubbing whir attached. Just about that much dubbing there. Again, pinch your loop, spin your whir. Brush out all these fibers. Sweep them all the same direction, and we're going to finish off wrapping our fly. And then tie off this loop. We're going to do just a couple wraps behind the loop here, and then a couple wraps in front, and trim the excess loop. And now we'll whip finish here. Cut off our excess thread. So from here, you can pull all your silly legs out of that spring. Grab your silly legs and your antenna. Chop them to length. Now we'll brush out our dubbing loop up here. And our dubbing loop by the eye of the hook. And I like to take the fly off, set it down on my vise base to just give it a flat surface to brush up against to get it all nice and brushed out. Now we'll stick it back in the vise. Take this bone dry, thin, hard solarez UV resin, and we're going to cover our whip finish here, and the thread wraps over the eye so it doesn't spin on you. Hit it with our UV light. There we have it. Spawning shrimp. The EP1 next to it.